Now, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
8:37 on the Morning Majority. Wilson and Neiman are in. Mary Catherine is off today. On the phone, Ambassador John Bolton, former UN ambassador, and a man who has some things to say about what's going on right now in Afghanistan. In case you haven't followed, there apparently were some troops involved in the inadvertent burning of the Quran over there, and it triggered huge protests, violent protests. And yesterday, the President of the United States issued a letter of apology to President Hamid Karzai. Ambassador Bolton, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, I think that's a big mistake. I mean, I think you apologize when you do something wrong. And while the facts are a little bit uncertain here, it seems to me that what happened was the United States, the soldiers involved, doing what they thought was the right thing to do, how to handle copies of the Quran that local religious leaders had agreed were desecrated by prisoners communicating with each other through writing on the pages of the Quran, which is a sacrilege. You know, when you give an apology for something where there's no basis for the apology, you're simply sending a sign of weakness to adversaries and friends as well. I don't think the president, after 3 years in office, yet understands that.
Democrats will point out that President Bush apparently called Nouri al-Maliki to personally apologize when a military sniper used the Quran as target practice. I mean, if it's been done before in the past, you're saying that that's something that was needed to be apologized for versus this one where we're not sure we had to apologize for it in this particular case?
I'm pretty certain in the present case we didn't have to apologize. Whether it was right to apologize in the earlier one, though, it is no justification for making a mistake now. And I think that sort of logic is simply saying that if we've made a mistake before, we might as well continue to make it, which is obviously ridiculous.
All right. On a larger note, though, when I look at stuff like this and I see, the rioting and now 2 American soldiers are dead because of this, because of, the possible burning of Qurans, I mean, I shake my head and I go, I mean, how can you win? How can you win against this kind of mindset when, there's no rationale there whatsoever? I mean, these are supposed to be our allies in Afghanistan.
Well, I think it's one reason why the concept that to prevail in Afghanistan, we have to engage in nation building. We somehow need to leave behind us a competent, non-corrupt, functioning government based on democratic principles is wrong. What we need to do is protect the key national interest why we went into Afghanistan to begin with, which was primarily making sure that it could never again be used as a base for terrorism. There are other interests we have now, most notably making sure that Pakistan doesn't fall to radicals and its stock of nuclear weapons doesn't come into their hands. But the notion we're going to leave behind as sort of Asian Switzerland was always misguided, and it's no wonder that we feel frustrated and that we're failing at that objective because we're never going to achieve it.
Let's talk about what's going on right now inside Iran. They continue, it does appear from all evidence that we can discern that they're continuing to build toward nuclear weapons. The IAEA was in there, and they basically had to leave the country, and they issued a statement as they left saying, we got nowhere. They're not serious about talking to us or revealing what's going on. And at the same time, the Iranian military getting a little more bellicose. What do you think is going to happen there, and how long before somebody takes action against Iran?
Well, let me just jump back 1 second on that to the subject of religious fanaticism. When you see crowds rioting, killing Americans because of the burning of a Quran, then imagine people like that in charge of a government with nuclear weapons. So let's start with that in mind, because that's what we're talking about as Iran makes progress toward that objective that they've been after for 20 years. I think it's very important that they've been stiffing the International Atomic Energy Agency, that they're going to continue to stiff them even while they try and drag out negotiations. They have no intention of allowing the UN inspectors full access. If they had full access, they'd discover the weapons program. So all of this is really about time. The reality here is that Iran is very close to a weapons capability. Everybody knows it. They just need a little bit more time, and they need to find ways through deception, through pretending to negotiate, through threatening to raise oil prices, threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz, anything to throw dust in our eyes and to convince the weak that, maybe we could negotiate with Iran, because a few more negotiations, they'll have nuclear weapons.
Do you think there's private pressure being put on the Israelis by the White House right now not to do this?
I think it's worse than that. I think they've had private pressure on them for 3 years. I think it's clear it's not working. I think Israel is going to do whatever it needs to do to protect itself. I don't know that they've made a decision, and if they have, I don't know what it is. But I think the private pressure's failed. I think, in fact, now the administration has switched to public pressure. You've seen several examples of it. Number one, the prediction, incredible prediction by Defense Secretary Panetta that if Israel attacked, it would be in the April, May, June period. How many examples do you know of America disclosing what its allies' potential war plan is to their adversary? Plus leakage from unnamed sources and former officials that Israel doesn't have the military capability. More leakages that our vaunted intelligence services have no hard evidence that Iran is actually building a weapon, as if the Iranians send out email updates every day just to make sure we're informed, all of which is intended to call into question whether Israel should actually use preemptive military force against the Iranian program. So I think it's the acknowledgement, in effect, that the private pressure has failed that has led to this public pressure.
On this program, we heard General Tom McInerney say that the Israelis could push the program back significantly with the weapons they have on board. What about the United States? Should we make the decision? It doesn't seem likely, but should we make the decision that we have to go in and do something? What are our capabilities? Do we have enough to set that program back?
Well, I'm sure Tom McInerney went into some detail, but this is at the outer limit of Israel's capacity, and there's no doubt they would prefer that we would undertake it, because we could do it far more comprehensively and set the program back a long way. My own view has been for years now that because the United States will be blamed if Israel attacks, we might as well help them and make sure the job gets done correctly. Nobody thinks the use of preemptive military force against Iran's program is a great idea. It's not. It's because we're down now to two options. One is that Iran gets nuclear weapons, and I think that's the most likely option. The other option is you use military force to prevent it. People who think that the sanctions are going to work, objectively speaking, by continuing to say that, by continuing to oppose military force, are simply giving Iran's nuclear weapons program legitimacy and cover to continue on its path to reaching its objectives.
Ambassador John Bolton, it's always a pleasure to have you on The Morning with George.